lot of people who ask me, I'm going to go buy a new table saw and I don't have much money. What's the best saw I should get? And I always give them the same answer. Don't. Go get one of these. Now, no one ever follows that advice, and I suspect it's because they think the task of taking this and turning it into an excellent working saw is too great. The fact is, it's easy. Anyone can do it, and it costs far, far less than even the crappiest entry model saws you could even approach. And when it's all said and done, you'll have a 2-horse belt drive monster that will last you for decades. Now, I paid $125 for this. He was asking $150, and from the look on his face, he thought he got a screaming deal. And to be honest, I think I got a screaming deal. You want to make sure when you're inspecting them that you get all the parts. This saw, for all practical purposes, is identical to the one I started my shop with. Now, the one I started my shop with had cast iron wings, which are arguably better than these tin ones, and it had a third wing, which went out even farther. But other than that, this is the exact same saw that I began my woodworking with. Now, I want to look for all the pieces. Did you get a rip fence? And does the rip fence work? This is a pinch lock design. You want to make sure, when you're inspecting it, that the rip fence still locks down, that it slides okay. Okay, so this one's a little rough, but probably that is because the rest of the saw is in rough shape. You're going to want to make sure it comes with an insert. This one's clearly homemade, but as long as it fits, that's fine. And if your saw doesn't come with an insert, you can always just make one. I can't even get it out now. And then, what did you get for a motor? This is the motor that came with the saw, and it says here's 110, 230, which is good. A 230 motor will always draw less power and cut smoother, though they're, a little more difficult to find the 230. 1 horse. So as far as I'm concerned, the motor is a little undersized for this unit, though it is a Craftsman motor. Now, that doesn't mean it necessarily came with this saw. I mean, Lord knows what came with this saw. It says 3 horsepower on it, but that's a joke. It's got a little asterisk. Peak horsepower. That's startup power. So that's not a real. That's like seeing a Black & Decker at 16 amps. Yeah, sure it is, buddy. The problem I noticed with this motor is it's real stiff. Real stiff. But that's okay. As part of this project, I'll show you how to rebuild the motors too. And then you want to look at your blade. Let's get this cranked up. As part of your inspection process, you're going to want to make sure that your tilt lock, and then your lift is all there. Now, there's a good chance it'll be stiff and it might even be jammed, but that's okay as long as it's all there. If you're missing these wheels, which is pretty common, don't sweat that. Don't sweat that at all. You can get replacements, and you don't have to get them from Craftsman. You can get them a lot of places really cheap. These do not look like the original wheels to me, which would make sense because they were probably plastic. Alright, that's far enough. How does the blade turn? Ooh, this one's real smooth. Now, I will probably take the time to rebuild that arbor just for the sake of the video, put new bearings in that, but this blade feels good, and it has no side-to-side wobble. Fact is, if you'd purchased this saw, as far as I'm concerned, that's one thing you wouldn't have to worry about. Our lock, yeah. So there, the lock does function. It's a spring-loaded lock. Sometimes they're a center wheel, like my General. It's got a center wheel there. I'd say the lock just locks the whole carriage, up, down, and sideways, if I remember from in the past. And then the switch. That actually was intact until I moved it, and I'm the one who broke that. But these switches here have a nasty habit of failing in the on position. And I know that I had one of these on a bandsaw, and I come back and the bandsaw blade is broken. The motor's just running, and it's just turning the wheels. I have no idea how long the bandsaw actually sat there running. Could have been hours, could have been days, because I hadn't gone into the shop in a while. But yeah, so even though I broke that, I'll probably end up replacing it. Looks like it's kind of hacked on there anyways. So this is what we've got to work with. And while she's not a beautiful, beautiful machine, we have all the key components. I have the rip fence. It's there. It's still functional. It's just stiff. That's fine. I've got the wings. You're going to want at least 2. This, by itself, is just not good enough. If you can find a saw with the cast iron wings, that's even better. I've got a motor. It's a little undersized, but it'll do for this purpose. It is stiff, so that's kind of a bummer. The carriage up-down is stiff, and the carriage tilt is stiff. But it's all there, and that's what's important. And so when you go and find one of these things, it's probably going to be in a very similar condition. Don't let that bother you at all. We're missing the saw cut insert. You can purchase those new if you wish, but I probably won't for this purpose here. Don't let it bother you in the slightest. This is fine. This is a beautiful saw. There's a tremendous amount of potential here. All you need is a little elbow grease, and you'd be surprised how little overall elbow grease is going to be required. So when people ask me, what's the best saw I can get for under 200 bucks? I always tell them this. I always say this. An old Sears contractor saw, and then take the time to rebuild it. I think the reason they don't do that is because the act of rebuilding it seems daunting. This thing looks like a piece of crap. You gotta see the gem underneath all that rough. And so I would expect you to be able to pick up an equivalent saw, especially if you were in no serious hurry, an equivalent saw for 100 bucks. You go to an auction, especially where they got 2 or 3 of these things at the auction, they rarely top 50. I was looking for this project so that I could make this video, so I could show people start to finish with a basket case. What's it take? So I paid a little more at $125. But if I was really looking, I easily could have found one in the $75 to $100 range. Over the course of this video series, I'm going to take that saw completely apart, and we're going to, from the ground up, rebuild it. And I'll show you not only how easy it is, but also how satisfying and just how nice a saw like that is going to cut when you're all finished. Also, the act of rebuilding it means that you will know its innards and its outards, and you will know how to adjust it and how to cut perfect lines every single time. And then when I'm all done, I'm going to give this to a young man as a wedding gift, a student of mine. He's really into woodworking, really nice man. I know what it is to be newly married and you want to go out and do something, but you're trying to cut a straight line with a skill saw. So I think this will be an appropriate and very useful gift for him. If you're in the market for a table saw, I do invite you to follow along with us. There will be a playlist, and the link is below, where you can follow video by video as I add them, and learn how to rebuild a saw of your own. Maybe it's a grandfather's, maybe it's your father's, maybe it's a neighbor's. Who knows? I mean, you usually get these things almost free. When you're done, one thing I can promise you, barring starting with missing pieces or mechanical difficulties, you will have a saw for less than the cheapest tabletop direct drive horrible induction motor monster you can purchase at a home center, and you will have a saw that will plow through 2 inches of oak and will run year after year, decade after decade. It'll be quiet, it won't vibrate. I always encourage people to take the risk on an old machine and fix it yourself.